Gaywyck by Vincent Verga. Publisher Allison Books, Los Angeles, New York. Narrator Eric Aust. I was pleased with Danough's arrival. His sweet presence stirred me. There were things I wanted to ask, things I wanted to tell, and things I wanted to do. Thinking me asleep, he whispered some words to Danvers. The tutor stood, and both withdrew. For an instant I feared his not returning. Fragments of a dream recurred, bearing forgotten discordancies. Where would I have gone had I left Gaywyck? What would I have done with the rest of my life? Isn't life what we cause to happen? But don't things happen without us? Yes, yes. He came in quietly, shutting the door carefully behind him. He walked to the windows and thrust them open, filling the room with the fragrance of wisteria. The Senate discordious breeze billowed the curtains, lifted the collar of his white silk shirt, and ruffled his hair. He stood in profile, lost in Riviere. I loved him past telling. Mas ni safely pas quatosos la plains, por revor, angoroquo foot la fret, he said softly. I wanted to call, but I needed to watch, to fasten the moment firmly in the eternal present. When he turned, our eyes met. Slowly I raised my arm. He eagerly crossed to me, looking calmer and relaxed. The shadow of Cormac was momentarily gone. I love you, I said. I love you too, my shiny boy. A knock on the door forced us apart. Ambrose wheeled in the dinner. He began to serve, but Danough dismissed him. It was lovely being alone with no one hovering about. It was the first time we had ever been thus. I reveled in the privacy. He served the food and sat by my side on the bed. I wanted to watch him eat. Eating is an act of hope and an act of faith. He laughed and kissed me, delighted at my perception, confessing a similar one. We are fragile creatures, I elaborated, easily punctured and poisoned, fit only for loving. He was wonderfully serene. Some sprays of honeysuckle had been thoughtfully and beautifully arranged on the dinner tray. He reached for one and fondled the delicate buds. I remembered a flower and a letter to my mother, carelessly lost and mysteriously recovered. Ghosts, poachers. How long had Cormac Gaylord been wandering the grounds of Gaywyck? What are you thinking about so intensely, Robert? Letters. I found one written by a house guest, an actress named Margie. Where? In a book of Poe. I think I liked her. She was a superb Orsino, if I recall her correctly. What else have you found? Jones planned to blackmail you. I know for certain now. He said Keyes told him Cormac killed your father. The man was mad. I told him about the hidden suitcase and the stolen treasures, but mostly I told him about the love letters from Keyes, the threatening note, and my conviction that the music teacher had murdered his pupil in a jealous frenzy. Was there nothing else in the suitcase, Robbie? I hoped to find my watch, but that was before. I mean, belonging to me. I knew what he meant. Studying the peonies, I envied them their mutability. He left my side. Did you look through everything at the dinner table? Jones mentioned photographs. Nodding slightly, unable to lie to him, I said weakly. I glanced. With a shock, I knew the photo was of me and Cormac in my bed. Danough had not lied. When did all this begin? Why had Danvers not told Keyes that Cormac was alive and in the grief? Danough sat in the chair on the opposite side of the room and turned his face away. I feared he would become frigid and withdrawn. I spoke the only words I could. I love you. Please, I love you. I know. I don't know why the photographs should humiliate me after what I've told you. I don't know why I never destroyed them. It isn't important any longer. Danough, you were a child. We were never children. How can there be such a thing as childhood in a world without innocence? A world twisted and gone rancid with mendacity. Springing to his feet, he bowed to the windows. "I can't breathe in here. Cover yourself if you're cold." I did so, and waited for him to continue. When he spoke, the harsh tone in his voice frightened me. "I should never have allowed you to live here. I should have forbidden it, but I thought the horror's over, finished. I thought them dead. I had the Rossetti and thought that would take care of everything." "I love you," I whispered. "Please, I love you." "You love me," he shouted, turning to face me. "He nearly killed you, and you love me?" "What has he to do with you?" "It's always been the same. I allowed it to happen." "It happened. It had nothing to do with you. Cormac did it, and I did it. Danvers is right. You're not a child anymore. He can't hurt you. Danough, there is nothing he can do to hurt you. Except take you from me." He was out. He'd said it. He slumped into the chair and wept. I went to him and knelt with my arms around his knees. He stroked my head. I held his fingers, kissing them. I loved him, but how does one teach another to trust? No, it was more than that. He had shared too many secrets not to know trust. Why do you say that? Why not? You can't honestly tell me that that you're what, Danough? That I'm as good as he is. I did not understand. I told him so. He studied my face, then laughed without humor. As potent, as exciting, he spat out, closing his eyes. Danough, it's you I want again and again. I love you, he snorted. Don't be jealous of him, Danough. Don't. It's I who should be jealous. You? You still love him. He lurched away from me and stood in front of the fireplace. Had I trespassed fatally? Danough, I want you to love him. If you don't love him and forgive him, we may never have a life of our own. He'll always be between us. Like he was between my father and Stephen? I don't know your father and Stephen. You tell me. He was my father's catamite. He often lay with Stephen and Papa. Did you ever? No. Why not? He remained silent. Danough, why not? They didn't want me. He was crying again. I placed my arms around him and rested my head on his shoulder. They don't want me, he sobbed, distraught. C is now with Papa and S often. I heard Papa tell S it was to make C manageable. Didn't you believe what your father said? No. Stephen accepted whatever Papa wanted until the end. When they fought, I've always believed they fought over Cormac. I know what you wanted. I'm sure they wanted you as much as Cormac, but couldn't find such a plausible excuse. He turned. He asked me to hold him close. The tears had never stopped, but now they built into a torrent. I led him to the bed, and we lay together. I wrapped myself around him while he cried for every wrong that had ever been committed against him. At first, I tried to comfort, then I began to weep from the joy of his deliverance. When his tears subsided, I kissed him effortlessly. I commanded him. Surrendering, he commanded me. I was taken with a loving force and propelled further than I had ever gone. I took him as he had taken me. Ecstasy was the reward. Benediction beyond bounds. I love you were the only words spoken, whispered, shouted. This is for all time, my Danough Gaylord. As though reading my mind, he pressed his hand over my heart. We slept, limbs entangled. I dreamed I was at the pond, feeding. Tristan and Isolde. Cale sat on my shoulder, perched like an owl. Suddenly he stretched his right paw and pointed to Danvers, riding on a broomstick over our heads. I fled along the shore, following the strains of Schumann's Traumerei, knowing they would lead me to Danough Gaylord. Cormac called me. I awoke and instinctively reached for Danough. He was not there. The bedclothes still held his warmth. Again, Cormac called my name. This time, I caught in the plaintive tone the whine of a beaten cur. I stood and reached for my robe, noticing that Danough had taken only his trousers. Where could he have gone in such haste? Then Cormac called again. I hurried to answer him. When I stepped out into the warm night, I could hear voices raised in the vicinity. I also smelled smoke. At the foot of the portico steps, Cormac waited. He wore his dark cape, and his hair was wet from the sea, and the light from the gibbous moons. His beauty revealed was startlingly unlike Danough's. Rough-hewn, it seemed unfinished. The way Michelangelo's uncompleted figures are captives of the stone, but no less powerful, present, defined. "Forgive me?" he demanded gruffly. "Forgive me, damn it. I'm leaving tonight. You'll never see me again." I nodded. "Walk with me, Robert." "No. I give you my word. I won't hurt you. Please, walk with me a short distance." "There's the fire. We must help. It's only a ruse. Denver said it to give us time. Walk with me. I'll explain everything." Shaking my head, I backed away. Climbing the steps, he nimbly thrust his fingers between my legs to gently seize me, exerting no pressure, merely asserting a claim as I once did. "Where do you want to go?" "To the dolmen. Hurry. We haven't much time." He seemed much larger than Danough. Side by side, we walked in silence down the avenue of lindens. Barefoot, he strode with a feral grace, not unlike his brothers. I allowed him to take my hand. The skin on his palm was rough. "Why did you show yourself when Danough wasn't here?" I asked directly, coldly, determined to hold my distance. Arrogant and too certain of untested strengths. "I wanted to warn you," Cormac replied. "Keyes was going to kill you, and I wanted to warn you." We stepped down the broken stones and entered the dell. He yanked me toward him and kissed me hard on the mouth. I pulled myself free. He gripped my wrist and smiled, a teasing half-grin. I was anxious, but not frightened. I was strong and able to defend myself. "I've given my word. I won't hurt you, lad. You needn't be so standoffish." He laughed, mocking my stern countenance. "How did you know about Keyes?" "Denver's told me. He said I wasn't needed anymore." "What do you mean?" He moved tightly against me. I did not move away, though he no longer held me. "I would never hurt you, lad. I was angry. I wanted to tear you out of my soul. I love you, Robert. Say you believe me." I did. The blood rushed to my heart. I was frightened. "Yes, Cormac, I believe you." "I couldn't leave without seeing you." "I knew you forgave me. Now you must say you love me." "But I don't love you, Cormac." "That isn't true, lad," he insisted. I loved him. He kissed my hair and rubbed his hand against mine. Suddenly, I felt nervous and less certain of my position. "Is it true, Cormac? How could I love you? I barely know you." He laughed, kissing my cheek, darting his tongue in small, hot circles. His beard scraped against my chin and made me sigh. "Yet what you know of me best, you love. Can you lessen what we've shared by refusing to use its rightful name?" I looked into his eyes. When he smiled again, my own closed in confusion and undeniable pleasure. He opened his hands to me. I clasped them. "Say it, lad." "Yes. I love you, Cormac. I do love you." "I had to hear you say it. Let me hold you." It could not mean I loved Danough poorly, or less well. But yes, I did love this man. I tried to understand, to qualify the love I felt for him, to distinguish it from the all-pervasive love I felt for his brother. There was no denying it. The need I had for Cormac Gaylord was a kind of loving. I loved the menacing free spirit I had imagined him to be, what everyone had told me he was. He embraced me. I responded to the sweep of his gestures as he stripped off my robe and pressed his hard, damp body against mine. His heady smell mingled with the tart smell of the sea. He kissed my lips. I behaved like a tumscent schoolboy, never before handled by a passionate man. I blushed. I stammered. Then I cleaved to him, begging for every pleasure at once. I wanted him to swallow me whole. He understood perfectly. He fondled. He caressed. He brushed aside whatever scruples blocked my way until I begged for him. Come away with me, lad. We'll take the world. You and I. Together, always. Come with me, lad. Come. Come. And there was no laughing. At the center of me there was a savage longing not quelled. There was trustees. I faced a void, an unfilled space, created by Danough. He alone had access. It echoed with his name. I clung to Cormac full of anger and remorse for wishing what I knew could only bring grief. I wanted to leave with him. I intended to be by his side. I wanted his love without danger of pain, without the danger of death. I alone would be immune to its ineluctable perils. Panic seized me. Oh, God, Cormac, why are you here? I'm here to save Danough, he laughed, confident of his powers, trying to calm me with more kisses and caresses. I was to dispose of you for Denvers. He often visited Nancy Wells and Mary Rose, arriving and leaving unseen in the night. The previous October, he had found a note from Denvers. Danough, it said. Proud, naive, simple Danough needed to be saved from a scheming cousin, a venal, evil whore of a beauty who planned to control the Gaylord fortune, and who threatened Denver's long-range plans to return Cormac to his brother's side. I was to help him drive you mad and save our precious Danough from himself. Mad? Drive me mad? Having an inherited weakness in the head, a slight nudge was to send me over the edge. My hysterical reaction to Mary Rose's image was encouraging. My collapse over Whitman, more so, even in my heavily drugged condition. The third night at Gaywyck, my response to Cormac as Danough was perfection, and Denvers had taken a photograph for later, used to further blur the demarcation between fantasy and reality. When he put on all the lamps to take the photograph, lad, I saw he was lying. You were none of the things he said. I was your first. I knew I was your first. I loved your sweetness and the trusting way you opened yourself to me. I was too rough, but I was more careful the second time. Wasn't I? Wasn't I? Cormac concealed his feelings from Denvers. He said the plan would take more time. After finding the letter to my mother, proof of my innocence, he lied to Denvers, pretending to leave on a voyage. He lived in the attic of the cottage, plotting to have and to love me as his father had, and loved Stephen, until he devised a way he would masquerade as Danough. He spied on me. He stole my watch, read my journal, eavesdropped on conversations to foster conviction. He gave me orchids and watched over me while I slept. How hopelessly entangled in his own pound net. And satisfied in the deception, he fell more and more in love with me. The death of Jones complicated matters. Denvers demanded quick revenge. Poor Denvers, Cormac sighed. First, he was convinced Danough did it. And then, he turned on me. I assured him it was Keys, his cat's paw. Keys after Keys killed you on the jetty. Denvers was planning to poison him and claim it as suicide. Did you meet Jones? He didn't recognize me either. The gutter snipe played blackmail games. I rolled him over and he squealed like a stuck pig. He died happy. What had begun as a roughing up to teach poor Jones a lesson ended in murder. I didn't intend to kill him, Robert. Did you intend to kill your father? I blurted angrily. My father and Stephen were already dead, he answered softly, wincing as I recoiled from his touch. They'd swallowed cyanide rather than live apart. They died for their love. I would do the same for you. I do not want anyone to do the same for me. The voices beyond the trees still shouted, but seemed like distant thunder. He had gone to comfort his father over the loss of Stephen, the beloved Stephen. The two men had been fighting continually. Stephen wanted to live openly with Gaylord to avow their love publicly, but Gaylord was unwilling. Stephen fled, then returned the next week. In the middle of the night, they died together. I soaked them in oil from the lamps and made a funeral pile. I knew what was required of me. Why did you run away? Denver said no one would believe me. There was no note. He said he would work things out with Nanny. He loved me. He wanted me safe. He loved my father, and he lost my father. Now he doesn't want to lose Danough. He's helping us to get away. He's done all this in the name of love. I do all this and more for you. We heard the sounds of a fire engine and the townspeople arriving by horseback and wagon. I want to go back, Cormac. I was wrong, I thought. He will kill me, too, in the name of love. That's no longer possible, lad. We're bound together now. You made your choice. You're coming with me. I can't go. I love to know. You must come. You belong to me. I won't go. People don't belong to other people. He pinched my waist with angry fingers. The muscles in his arms knotted, swelling with impatience. I recognized a sense of helplessness in the face of his darkening temper. He forced me to share his cape as we struggled down the path that connected the sunken garden to the beach. It's what you want, lad, he said sternly. Once we're away from here, it will be clear again as it was a few moments ago. I'll make certain of that, Robbie. This is madness, I thought, meekly complying. Does he expect us to walk where we're going, dressed in this own cape? When we reached the beach, I broke from him, intending to view the fire. We both knew I could not escape by running. He did not give chase. I stopped. Out in the waves, the steam yacht awaited to bear us away. I turned to face him. He glared at me, snarling at my evident surprise, aware I had underestimated him. I spun and ran to the jetty. I would be seen. People would save me. I leaped up the rocks to the top. In seconds, he stood beside me, his arm around my waist. Together we gazed on the conflagration, consuming the room occupied by Keyes' corpse. The fire engine pumped water. People carried buckets and carted the treasures from the house. I saw figures running down the beach toward us. Cale led Danough and Brian. I turned to look at Cormac. He was signaling the steam yacht, which had begun to approach the jetty. He pulled me to the end of the stone pier. Cormac, I won't go with you. Then we'll die together, lad. It can't be any other way now. I shoved him, knocking the cape from his shoulders. I expected him to drop, deflated by my full force. Instead, he cuffed me brutally. Enraged, he called me fool. I stepped backwards. He grabbed a fistful of my hair and clutched my throat, with his left hand instantly squeezing me breathless. The searing pain paralyzed me. The fury in his eyes were murderous. My legs buckled. My nose started to bleed. I gagged on my screams. Cale clawed his foot. Cormac eased his hold enough for me to suck in air, while he raised his leg to kick the animal into the sea. Cale! My Cale! Cormac brought me to my knees. He dragged me close and pressed my face up into his groin, bending me backward to snap my spine. With my last strength, I bit him. Howling, he released my throat to shake me loose. Clenching my jaws against his blows, I bit harder. Blood spurted down my neck. Danough shouted his name. A gunshot. He flew back, releasing me completely. My neck and throat felt scalded. Side of my head numb. I was shaking uncontrollably, and the blood I feared flowing down my thighs was my urine. Brian murmured loving words. He held a smoking pistol. I wanted to hide, to cover my face and hide myself from shame and self-loathing. Danough knelt by Cormac's side, cradling his head in his lap. I crawled toward them and stopped halfway. Cormac raised his head for me to come near. I knelt at his other side. A bullet had torn open his chest. Blood spilled from the wound. Don't, he whispered to his brother. Dear, don't. He did not want to go. I tried to take him with me, but he did not want to go from you. Cormac, Danough sobbed. Stay with me. I think I'm dying, Dote. This isn't what I planned, he laughed. I wanted to come back, but Denver said it could not be. Said I would be hanged. I nearly died without you. I used to sneak into your room and watch you sleep. You never knew. I was looking after you like I said I always would. He took my hand and gave it to his brother. I nearly got away with him, he grinned. I love you, Toad. Danough kissed him on the cheek. Cormac lifted his arm and threw it around his brother's neck. There's not a one like you in the world, Dunny. I know. I looked. Go with your lad. He loves you. He loves you. He loves you the only way I... Cormac! My Donnie. I've come home. Cormac! He's dead, Brian whispered. I covered him with the cape. Danough raised me to my feet. Unbuttoning his shirt, he stripped it from his back and wrapped me in it. He carried me down to the beach, where Cale sat, cleaning his drenched body. There's Denver's, Brian shouted clearly. I glanced past the gun he held toward Gaywyck. At first, I thought the heart of the great house was ablaze, but it was the moon glinting on the surface of the window. The fire was nearly contained, reduced to streams of writhing smoke. To my dazed and swollen eyes, the sight of Denver's wrapped in flames, plunging through the oval window amidst shattering glass and splintering light, could have been a magic lantern image of Lucifer's fall from grace. Cormac didn't kill your father, I said, forcing the words from my searing throat. I know, Robbie. Keith poisoned them. Keith? He didn't want them to leave Gaywyck. My father was planning to live abroad with Steve, but... No more, dear boy. No more. Later we'll talk. I could not bear it all. All these years, Cormac had thought them classic, tragic lovers, embracing death. He was willing to give his life, had given his life, for what he believed was their truth. I could not bear the lie. I looked at the oval hole, where no sunrise would shine that morning. No more Polyphemus. Only complex earthly loving, I sobbed, hearing the cock crow. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.